Hello and welcome to the Daily Atheist Morning Show. It is Wednesday, January 29th. See, I warned you and then I did it myself, Richard. I got Richard Madsen joining me this morning. Hi, Richard. How you doing today?
Doing great. Peace and respect to you all. How you doing this morning, Mr. Chris?
I'm doing wonderful so far. The atheist pastor, AP, he's got the cooties today. He is down. If you will all pray for him. I couldn't know myself. I'm sorry. Yeah, so better. Okay, the atheist pastor is down. He's got the cooties. He's got some kind of throat thing. He's not going to be joining us today. We all hope he gets better. Thoughts and prayers. Thank you to everybody in the chat, all you guys who showed up for this morning. Randy, nice to see you. I'm glad you liked the show. Richard Madsen, he's in the chat. He's here with me today. That's wonderful to have him. He had to adjust his schedule, his body clock to get with us.
A lot.
Dave is asking a question here. He wants to know if you're sick.
I've never been early for anything this early.
No, I see that. Yes, roughly on time. I've been to Math Pig's thing. You know, on Math Pig, he'll come into my channel. Pardon me, Damplon. He'll come into my channel and he'll go, how come the show hasn't started yet? It's scheduled for 6 and he's at 5:20 and he's like, I gotta wait. I'm tired of waiting. Of course, I know he's just ribbing me, you know. So I go back to his channel. I'm doing the same thing. Well, how come I gotta wait? You know, I'm waiting here. I'm waiting. And then with my channel, I'm watching the seconds tick, tick. As soon as it says go, I'm hitting live and we're going. But I get over to Math Pig's channel and -5, -10 seconds. And he ain't live. I'm like, now you're making me extra wait. Not all, it's like the Twix of waiting. I waited before and now I'm waiting again. Then he finally graces us with his presence. So, hey, Richard, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and tell us what you're all about for those folk who don't know you.
Okay, well, as you can tell, I got a YouTube channel called Demolish Doctrine, and the link's going to be in the description. Thank you, Chris. Well, and I call the channel Demolish Doctrine because I think the point of spiritual stories is that eventually they demolish religion itself, and the beginning of that is demolishing doctrine. So when I open my shows, I open it with "Welcome to the Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religion," and I really mean that. I think we've gotten to the point in our history where it's time to get rid of religiosity, and cling to what we know is true and what we can find out and what we can prove. So you can find me at Richard Curtis Madsen at Gmail. Or Richard Curtis M2 at Twitter, and also at Demolish Doctrine on YouTube, which if you use my name or Demolish Doctrine or both, probably should use both. Turns out there's a lot of Richard Madsens in the world, but funny name, but not so uncommon, I'm afraid. And all of them have better education than I have, which I find interesting.
Well, you know, I didn't get your Twitter link down in the description, so if you'll give it to me after the show, I will. I'll put it in there for the future peeps who check it out. Yes. So, well, thank you for joining me today. I've seen some of your stuff. You're doing a series with El Pigo de Matho. You folks didn't know I spoke Spanish.
Amazing.
I know, right? It's uncanny. So you do this series with Math Pig. Currently, you said you're on your second series. Now I knew about the Book of Enoch. I did not know you were doing. I did not know you'd done something before. You want to tell us about the first one, and then go into the Book of Enoch for me?
Sure.
Kind of tell us what you got going on.
So, boy, the story starts back in 2012. You have to picture me an anti-theist, and by anti-theist, I mean I was making the positive claim there can be no God, and I was trying to convince others of the same thing using modern science, as you'd expect a person to do.
Of course.
And refuting the historicity of the Bible. Which is pretty darn easy to do. And now I consider it somewhat of a straw man view to present that view of the text and then knock it down. I think it's just way too easy. And I also think it's not what the text is talking about. But in 2012, although I've never, and I, of course, being an anti-theist, I had no reason to study any apologists or study the Bible at all, but was presented quite rapidly and without, I have to say, almost without my request, a view of the Bible that actually comports to reality. And I've been talking about it ever since because it compels me, which is why I now call myself a theist. But the transition from anti-theist to theist was probably about 20 minutes, definitely less than an hour, where I saw things that are provable. And I changed my mind about what these things must mean. Now, it has nothing to do with Christian doctrine.
Right.
Nothing at all.
And that's the catch, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, people automatically start assuming things about your religion without actually understanding or you're not your religion, your faith or your belief, without actually understanding them. They just, he's a theist, and they go from there.
Thereby, I must believe in triomny. Thereby, I must believe that God is outside of time-space. Thereby, I must believe that God created all things.
Could you define the triomny for MathPig?
For MathPig.
Since he's watching.
No. I think he understands it, but I'll go over it anyway. I just
for anybody watching, just that term.
Yeah. Triomny is an expression that where Christians normally believe their text is describing, and in their context that it is what it's describing. That there's necessity, although it doesn't say specifically in the text, that God be omnipotent and omnipresent. And there was one other omni that I don't believe in. What was that one? Omnipotent, omnipotent, omnipresent, and what's that? Omniscient. Right. Those would be the three omnis, the triomnies. So I not only don't find that in the text, but I have pretty good reason to believe why some of those are self-defeating. You couldn't be two of those three. You could be one of them, but you couldn't be all three of them. Because they cancel each other out for certain reasons that I can't describe because I'm not that well educated. But when I heard the arguments on, I think, Holy Kool-Aid and others, I thought they were really decent arguments. I thought they made logical sense why you couldn't be all three of those things. But that's okay with me if the stories are not describing that, and that's only a doctrinal view of the stories.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
I just, you mentioned it before the show, and I'd heard it. I want to get you to break that down for us. Okay, so carry on with how your story going to.
So we were talking about my exchanges with MathPig and others.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in 2012, I was presented a view where the story of David and Goliath, and to be specific, from 1 Samuel 16:23 through 18:6. And then that's where the subject changes fall right there, is actually describing the sun and the first 5 planets in our solar system and the 4 major moons over Jupiter and the asteroid belt. And applying the story of David and Goliath to those stellar bodies, although it's extremely unlikely. Like, there's no way this could ever happen. Well, I guess it could happen, but through naturalistic cause, almost impossible. It's such a delicate operation that's being described there. But it would result in a series of cause and effect that would, the thing that people would notice most readily, and everyone from this earth would notice as long as you have relatively normal eyesight, is the ignition of the planet Jupiter into a short-term star. That would be the most recognizable thing. And
hello to Arthur C. Clarke, right?
Arthur C. Clarke. Who's Arthur C.?
I'm sorry.
I've heard that name.
I'm sorry, carry on. I was thinking 2001. 2010.
Space Odyssey.
The movies, yes. Carry on.
I've seen part of that.
I said the wrong name. My apologies. Go on.
I don't even know.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I think it is Arthur Clarke. Didn't he write the 2010? Who wrote 2010?
All you have to do is ask the side chat. They'll tell you.
They'll tell you. That's a good point.
These are brainy guys. They'll tell you.
They know all that stuff. Carry on with your
So it would cause a series of there's a first cause that's a comet, and then a series of events that follow it, which would make what is in the book of Revelation, which I also did not know at the time. I didn't know the book of Revelation at the time. It would also make the quote unquote signs of God's coming. So the 7 signs would be played out in our solar system for believers, non-believers to see.
Okay.
That's the general overview. So we did a series on that, and he found it interesting enough, and it gave him good excuse because he probably wanted to do it anyway. Gotcha. He bought Universe Sandbox 2.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Nice toy, right?
Yeah.
So
Took a second to snap as to. Oh, real quick. The chat has confirmed it was Arthur C. Clarke.
Okay.
With the second star turning Jupiter into a second star.
Right. Okay. Well, I suppose it's almost impossible, but chemically plausible.
Okay.
And people say no, it's not plausible. Are saying, well, it would have to be some approximately 81 times its present mass for self-ignition to start fusion in its core. But what's being described is not an increase of mass out of nowhere. It's not magic being described. What's being described is chemical reactions through a series. That's what's being described.
Okay, and while we're here, before we get too far along, I would like to make a note so I can do some reading myself afterwards, some research. What scriptures you said it was first this to this, so I can
ready?
I'm ready.
You ready? Okay. So it's 1 Samuel 16:23.
Okay.
Through 18:6.
Gotcha. That way I can just eyeball it myself and go see what you're talking about.
Well, if you'd like, okay, so I'm a fan of Skylar Fiction and Digital Hammurabi, and if you aren't subscribed to those channels, go get this. Digital Hammurabi is a serious scholar and has serious scholars on his channel and on a regular basis, and they cover Near Eastern ancient studies, including Egyptology, Assyriology, etc., etc. They cover Gilgamesh and just all kinds of stuff. Amazing stuff. Great scholars. And he recently wrote a book, which I think is going to be fairly popular at his level. So I'm a big fan of Skylar Fiction and Digital Hammurabi. So I was listening to Digital Hammurabi and Skylar, and Digital kept saying, well, if you think you have an interesting view on some piece of history, you should write an essay. So I did.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did all of the definitions. I cited everything in science that we know modernly that makes this plausible. Didn't say likely. I did not say likely. Plausible.
Plausible.
And I made a paper, an essay on presenting the idea definitionally and contextually with citations, and that is open to anybody who wants it. I'll send you the link. You can peruse it, and you won't have to do all the research yourself. It's already done.
Right.
And as far as like checking against my sources, I use sources like NASA.gov.
Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And like Bible.com, just like real super standard stuff that's easy to find, and didn't take much risk at all.
Right.
Didn't have to.
Okay, so now I distracted you from your story. So you were telling us about how you had found in those scriptures X, Y, and Z. I interrupted you so I could mark them down.
Okay.
Now, if you want to carry on with because I found that stuff fascinating. Okay,
so MathPig and I are going to try to use Universe Sandbox 2 and get it just perfect and get this thing to actually work in the series that's being described in the text as ancient historical characters, which I contest are not historical characters at all, but is just using natural surroundings to tell us something more important than the natural surroundings. In other words, animism.
Okay.
I basically think that the Bible is speaking in animistic terms, like all black wolves are bad. Well, no more than white wolves that aren't good, But still, native tribes use those words that way. Right. To express something that has nothing to do with wolves.
Right. I remember seeing a documentary about how tribes, the lesser developed their language is the fewer words they have for colors. And they have some tribes that are extremely their language is extremely proto. It's proto language, and all they have is light and dark. They don't really have colors at all. They just have light and dark. Now that makes it interesting, but that doesn't make it I know doesn't make it real. Or I mean, the fact that if God spoke in those ways, that just doesn't that's a powerfully unclear way to get a message across. Almost nobody's going to, billions and billions and billions and billions of people, that message is just going to go right by them until it gets to Richard, because it's a very unique way of seeing things.
Well, I really think just like somebody in the past made a wheelbarrow, and I don't know what that dude's name is.
Yeah, I got you.
I think what's happened with me is I'm just the first guy with a wheelbarrow. I won't be the last one.
No,
and I don't think it's special that I have a wheelbarrow. I think it's workable. I think it's handy. I think it's usable.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't think that's special. And I especially think eventually it won't be special at all.
Right. Well, I was just kind of referring to your description of all wolves being black. Well, that's horribly inaccurate. I understand what you're saying. We're applying it to the lexicon of the Bible, see? And that's why I'm going, well, yeah, but that's, again, by the divine word, that sounds like somebody whose language is whose understanding of language is very small.
Right.
Is kind of how it seems.
I think the flip side of that coin would be if you actually did speak Spanish, which I suspect you don't. But if you actually did speak Spanish and you spoke Spanish to me, and I know I don't speak Spanish, then your words would be lost on me. And if you can't relate it in some way that I can understand, then it's not going to be meaningful to me in the first place.
That's right.
So like if you're a kindergarten teacher and I'm a kindergarten student, you're going to have to condescend to me and use my simplicity.
That's right. But the Bible doesn't. See, the Bible writes in its own words. And not only does it write in a foreign language, but it couches that in metaphor. And not only does it couch it in metaphor, but now here it's also going to use, I don't remember the word you used to describe the
animism.
Now it's going to use animism to be even more vague than it possibly could have been before. It's a completely useless message.
I'm not sure that it's fair to say vague. So although it's true that
vague, vague. I would almost say it's more inaccurate than vague because no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Not really, because so say I described absolutely everything that I can see in your room. Mm-hmm. That would be a pretty long story.
That would be a long story.
And just from this camera angle,
it would be a boring story. Yes, well, long and boring.
It might be really boring. Well, it's just furniture and stuff. But
yes.
But I could briefly describe what I can see in your background, right, and keep it fairly concise. Yes. And if I just hit the major points, you'd say, "Oh well." If you heard the description that I was giving, you'd say, "Oh, you're describing what's behind me."
Right.
And it couldn't be that I was describing anything else, but I wouldn't have to go into necessarily what kinds of slides are on the drawers in the cabinet.
That's true.
In order to say that I'm definitively talking about what's behind Mr. Mallard.
Yeah.
Okay? So the story does not contain all science, not even close to it, or even everything in the solar system, not even close to it. No. But there's enough identifiable points that it can't be talking about something else. That is, I'm saying it can't be coincidental.
Okay, so I just want to, before we move on, because I really want to get to your Enoch stuff.
Sure.
The 1 Samuel 16:23 through 18:6. Mm-hmm. You say, and I'll go back and watch the video, they identify X, Y, and Z planets and stuff like that. If those things could be found, exist in existing knowledge in Egypt and or Greece at that time or before that time, would that do anything to dispel, any notions that has any legitimacy? I mean, just because they said that doesn't necessarily mean that that's divine.
Remember when we were talking just ever so briefly before the show and said it's easy when you meet someone, if they declare themselves a theist, that you're going to make certain assumptions about their belief system.
Yeah. No, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So appeals to emotion, including the pride of the person you're speaking to, is a logical fallacy. Okay?
Okay.
So
Okay.
if I say to a Christian, well, you've already dismissed 99.999% of the gods. I'm only asking you to dismiss once more.
Uh-huh.
That's an appeal to emotion. That's taking advantage of the pride of the Christian who says, my religion's right, yours is wrong.
Okay.
So when you ask me, well, if the story existed elsewhere prior to the Bible, would I lose value in the Bible? Actually, it would confirm my belief that everyone has been told the truth forever.
Oh, I
It,
see.
it would
Oh, cool.
actually confirm the story rather than help tear it down. Because I don't have a Christian pride thing going on.
No.
I don't
Well, I
think
mean,
it's about that.
it's just that my only point was that if it's, I mean, it's not divine knowledge that nobody could have known except the person in that Bible. If somebody in another country 200 years before then had written it down, then there's nothing divine about it. It's just some guy who happened to get that knowledge and put it in this
That,
book.
well,
That
well,
was,
yeah,
yeah.
it
But I'm
is
being
about
too
having
argumentative.
knowledge and writing
Yeah.
it down and confirming it. Yeah, it's
Right.
definitely about that. But I think that's the point. I don't think the
Right.
point is I'm right and you're wrong.
No, no, no. Well, yeah, no, I get
I
that.
mean,
Okay.
between those peoples, that's not
No,
the
yeah.
point at all.
No, no. That's okay. I get you.
So when I read the Epic of Gilgamesh and I cry seeing the story of Moses in it,
Hmm.
I don't have any problem with Moses being recalled earlier in Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh was first.
Yes, that's what I mean. Earlier in
Oh,
Gilgamesh.
okay. Yeah. Well,
I have no problem with
yeah,
that. It's just the
okay.
same story.
It's the same
Uh,
story. Yeah.
does the same story being told more than once make it false? No, only Christian pride would make it false.
Right. I guess if you see it that way, absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
So
Interesting.
it's
Interesting
it's
view.
really just
Yeah.
their pride. It has nothing to do with the validity or the invalidity of the story.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting how they say this story has power and is proof that they're X, Y, and Z, and we go, well, wait, somebody else wrote that first, and then there
Sure.
again, here comes their vanity. Oh, well, all of a sudden,
Well,
but
it's
then it doesn't change their belief.
right, but it's kids on the
Yeah.
playground. My dad's better than yours.
Right.
That's all it is.
But then
I mean,
one dad comes over and beats up the other dad, and the kid whose dad got beat up still doesn't believe that his dad is.
that was beautiful, beautiful analogy. No, you're right. You're right. That's
Yeah.
what they do. It's blinded by the light, if you will.
Good morning, Maya. Sorry, I just want to shout out to some folks.
Oh,
There's
is Maya
Inquisitive
Atkinson here? She
Quandary.
is here. Hello,
Maya's
Maya.
here. All manner of folk are showing up for
Nerdy
us this
Rodent.
morning.
Right
Nerdy
on.
Rodent.
Doorknob head. Please don't read Doorknob head while we're talking. Don't do it.
Very,
Don't.
very distracting, huh?
Very distracting. Yeah,
Yes.
I always ignore him if I'm talking to somebody. If I'm in the chat, I'll engage with him, but no, not otherwise.
Well, today we don't have, for those of you who showed up late, the Aussie Chris, the other Chris, best Chris, as I think he likes to be called, he's got the cooties today. He's got some kind of voice thing, so I'm stepping in. My Australian's not nearly as good. I can say Foster's for beer. Is that? Do y'all feel at home now? I'm, he told me.
Boy, they're going to complain about that. No, even if it sounds great to us, it's not right,
Oh no, I know. Well, I think they'll have less problem with the accent than the fact that I mentioned Foster's. They seem to have you've seen those Foster's Australian for beer
Sure,
commercials.
sure.
Apparently, they don't
It's
believe
not actually good beer.
But that's not well. Even the Australians, are. So all I got to do is mention some Foster's, and he calls it the F word. Okay, all right. I digress. Back to your thing, so we can get to the Enoch, so you can fill us in on the
Sure.
Enoch, because that's where I'm at in the story. That's where I met you, was as you and El Matho de Pigo were doing the thing. So,
Well, El Matho de Pigo and I are what we're doing is I did read through almost all of the books of Enoch in
Okay.
2012, early in that year, right after I saw David, or right before I saw David and Goliath. In fact, it was the book of Enoch that caused me to pick up a Bible. I wouldn't even have picked one up.
okay,
But I wasn't looking to make it true or anything. I didn't care about that. I picked it up at best for academic reasons more than anything. But anyway, So we're going back now and applying the view that I've adopted that I apply to all religious stories to the Book of Enoch. Now, what we apply it to, I don't care. I recently applied it to the Epic of Ramayana. Works great. The Epic of Gilgamesh, it works great. I mean, just all the stories. Recently, with a friend, I started going over, which are new to me, Aboriginal stories from Australia, where they also work, which I've never heard in my life. And I don't think you're going to find a Christian that goes, "Oh yeah, Bible, Australian, Aboriginal, same." But actually, the overview does work and justifies the stories in the same way that it justifies the stories in, well, everywhere else that I look.
Right. And Nerdy's asking the question, do we mention Australian? And, we can talk about them because Chris isn't here. So, yeah, sure enough. Now, I've heard some things about the Aboriginal stuff, too. I appreciate that you've gone there. Have you talked to any of I don't know if you talked to the Aussies?
Yeah, the friend of mine I was referring to is Australian.
Okay, carry on. All right, got you.
And he found copies of the stories and was reading them to me. And so a couple of the stories I was able to relate to the Bible with, well, in one case, the word, just a single word, Nephilim.
Okay.
And in another case, it was a broken sentence, beast of Satan. But all of them within 2 or 3 sentences, I could say, oh, that's the same story as, and he could see that it's the same story as easily as I could.
Okay.
Although we've had some introduction, he generally understands where my brain's at.
Right. And how long have y'all been running these series?
With MathPig,
yeah,
I think around 4 months, something like that.
Really?
We started on the first series, and now we're on the second one with Enoch.
Because I just caught the last part of the most recent one, so I'll have to go back and do some catching up. For any of you guys, if you're not subscribed to Richard, go subscribe to his channel, Demolished Doctrine. He's got some very interesting views. That was one of the reasons. I mean, this is the Daily Atheist Show, right? You're not an atheist.
Real atheist. Well, sort of.
Well, right. That's why I thought it'd be interesting to have you on, because your views are so, again, I want to say unique. I find them unique. We haven't even gotten into the before. This is history. This is possible future aspects of your. I don't want to use the word doctrine.
Well, Chris, the way I see you is you can be kind, and you can be generous and empathetic and understanding of others.
Right.
And I'm thinking your IQ is probably not over 250.
Probably not.
I hope probably somewhere lower than that, somewhere above 100, but less than 250. It's in that range somewhere.
It is in that range.
So
my mother had me tested.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So, and you're able to grasp concepts like you should be kind to people.
Right.
That's not too complicated.
Of course.
And not to be prejudiced. Prejudice is a bad thing.
Right.
And when you speak to someone who's significantly less intelligent than you are, you recognize it, and you don't make fun of them. You take that into consideration, and you use maybe smaller words and shorter sentences with less complex ideas, so that person can stay in the conversation and be engaged and not feel shunned or made fun of.
That's a great
But Christian
example.
doctrine has God doing all those terrible things.
Right.
Well, that doesn't make sense if it were a God.
No, I agree. Yeah. Well,
okay, so how could
if
you
it were
be like a prejudiced jerk God?
That's right. Well, if it were a benevolent God, as described by the Christians, yeah. If you're a person who can sit there and go, yeah,
well, that's
my
not
God's
benevolence.
See, I agree with you. I'm just saying that's how they feel it's benevolent, and we don't agree with that.
It's jerkulence. Right? It's
right.
It's prejudicence, but it's not benevolence.
Which leads us right back to my Evil God Monster of Abraham series.
Right on.
That's how they describe it as,
Sure.
Here's my loving, peaceful God. But when
Who's
you open the book,
murderous and
yeah, so that's the whole premise of the series I have coming out, the Evil God Monster of Abraham series. I'm going through the chapter by chapter, exposing that monster. But
you're never going to get done with that series, boss.
No, never.
There's so much there.
If you as a Christian or a believer or a theist of any kind simply go, Yeah, my God's mean. He's a monster. He will tear you the hell up and just shit on you and throw you down in hell forever and ever and ever. And he'll do it to babies, and I don't care because there are people who will do that. I was having a debate with a guy. We were talking about the Trinity. I'm like, all right, so if you're God, Jesus is God, do you have a problem with Jesus killing babies? Because God killed tons of babies. Like, no, that's just how it is. I'm like, okay.
Well, at least he's willing to eat it, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, but then you can't. But then that's the whole deal with them is that they can turn around and go, yes, but it's a peaceful, merciful, loving God. They've got that duplicity in their nature. No, they'll turn around and admit that it's a monster, and then holy, holy is the Lord. Jesus loves you. He's peace. He's mercy. He's this. And I'm like, wait a second.
I like to point out to Christians and it's just like you just said. Christians will say, oh, Jesus is loving and kind and correcting the old rules and all that stuff. But they forget that Jesus actually agrees with the whole Old Testament. Okay, so I think they have a choice right there. Mm-hmm. Jesus is actually a jerk and hiding it. That's an option.
That's okay.
Yeah. Or their understanding of the stories is wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But you can't have both.
But and some of the arguments I often bring is, why? If it's a perfect God, and he's perfect this, and he's perfect this, and this is his perfect word, why are they misinterpreting it?
Oh, wait a minute, Nerdy Road, I recognize that line. We come in peace. Shoot to kill, shoot to kill, shoot to kill.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, we've got Watchtower Watcher. He's here.
Hey.
Sam.
Brother Sammy.
How you doing? Nice to see you this morning. I'm just going to say a shout out. Let's see. Doorknob head. Don't read it. Don't read it. Don't read it. Whatever you do not read that on the screen now.
I'm just going to wave at him. Hi, Doorknob head. I'm not reading your stuff, bro.
Yes. Oh, yeah. You talking about the Evil God Monster of Abraham series? Yeah, I hope that's what he's talking about. Yeah, because I enjoy that one.
So I like to say to Christians, guys, if you are in principle saying that God is prejudiced and horrible and hateful and murderous, that I don't think that's a description of a God of any kind anywhere. That shouldn't be a God. And if Jesus argues with your view of the Old Testament and he says the Old Testament is good, maybe you should think about your view of it.
Right. As Jesus is sitting here participating in the things the Old Testament tells you to do, you're going, we don't do that. I'm like, wait a second. Jesus was a Jew. Are you a Jew? If you're not a Jew, then you're not like Jesus. The math involved in unpacking some of that.
There's some disconnect going on somewhere.
Just a little bit, yes. So
yeah.
I had another question for you here. We already covered your enlightenment story, how long you've known MathPig. You were telling me how you met MathPig. That was through...
he was through Scholar Fiction. That's how I met him.
Scholar Fiction, because I still need to look up. For those of you, Richard really recommends Scholar Fiction and Digital Hammurabi. So go check them out. So,
right.
Don't forget to give us a like. See, normally Chris is here, and he tells them to like. So I'm telling, I'm going to sick Chris on you.
Well, you can dislike it. I always dislike the videos of people that I'm a fan of. I do, because then it doesn't end up on your liked list, but the metric, apparently the metric doesn't see the difference.
Oh, I see.
It only cares if you vote. So I dislike everyone's video whose I love. So
I see. Well, don't love my videos. Just stop it. Stop it.
Well, I just dislike. I'm going to dislike your videos. You can't stop me, bud. So,
no power in the verse can stop me.
So, no, but other channels I really also recommend is MathPig, who is a lot of fun and brilliant, and I also recommend A Raging Atheist.
Okay.
And if you want some good Christian arguments presented in a tongue-in-cheek way, I really recommend that you go and look at Dark Matter 2525.
I've seen some Dark Matter. They've got some fun stuff over there.
I love his stuff on Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, where the whole world gets covered in a layer of people and they don't die. It's hilarious.
Yep. Good stuff. That was one of the first ones that I don't know how long they've been out. They've been out a long time, because I remember, many, many moons ago, whenever I was first poking my head in the atheism. Well, I wrote my book back in 2013, and they were around then doing their videos. So
you wrote a book? What's the name of that book?
It's called Atheist.
What's it
Yeah.
about, Chris?
It's about not being for religion. It's really all right. Let me do that real quick because I don't ever talk about it on here. But it's a book that each chapter has a different series. And this is my deal about why you should not believe in. And throughout that book, I refer to I call it the evil God monster of Abraham and the book of death. And then my series that I've got going now is justification for why I call it that. Going through the chapter. But anyway, in that book, each chapter is a different topic. Like the first chapter is like what the definitions, when I say I'm an atheist or I'm an agnostic in the book, this is what I mean. Years later, I pop on the internet and I see all these atheists in this group and I jump into this debate and it's two atheists fighting over whether they're agnostic and all this. It was Steve McRae and some guy named Duke and it was just all ugly. I'm like, that's not the group I want to be in. I don't want to sit around arguing with other atheists. That's not my or agnostics. Sorry, I've said atheists. Oh no, flame war. Right? I don't need that kind of problem. So but that's the book, and then it goes on. Chapter I think 3 covers how religions, the Abrahamic religions, treat women. Chapter 6 is about Satan. I go through there. In there, I point out things like Jesus at Gethsemane and a half-naked young man runs away from Jesus. But wait, the guy who wrote that story wasn't even there in the story. So there's lots of problems with that. So I just kind of expose those things and I do it. But each one is a different chapter.
I'd love to help you point out more.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, because I notice things about and I'll say it to preachers and etc. Mm-hmm. They can't answer my questions. Like, if it's true, if federal headship is true and Adam and Eve brought evil into this world, then wasn't the serpent evil when it tempted them, and wasn't it there before they ate of it? They didn't bring evil into the world.
It was already there.
It was already there.
The sin was there. Yeah,
Christians will pass right over that and not even talk about it.
That's a great point. Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of those that just pop out of the text at me, and I go, you guys are full of crap.
Yeah, I love that. Well, that's what my plan is with my Evil God Monster of Abraham series. I'm going to do, I think, 20 episodes, and I'm going to take the scripts from each one, put them in a little PDF book, and drop it off as a book. And then I'd like to go around sort of like our other atheist heroes in our little community who goes speaking, like Aaron Ra. Sorry, my Texas accent gets in the way of Aaron Ra goes around speaking. I'd like to go around one day doing lectures on my Evil God Monster of Abraham series and all those things. So that's kind of how I'm building that out. And it, of course, like I said, it all attaches back to the book I wrote in 2013. So we'll see how it goes. Actually, really, if I was to write another book, I have a manuscript. It's a science fiction sci-fi book where, like Stargate based a lot of its stuff on religions from history. I don't know if you watch Stargate.
I know
vaguely familiar with it.
A little bit.
Yeah, but Babylonian gods are actually real aliens who came, but they don't ever really go into Christianity. They don't really address Christianity. The one episode
I would disagree with you that's all the same thing.
What do you mean?
Babylonian religion is Christian religion.
No. I get you. For the purposes of the show, there's Baal. There's
okay.
Baal, who is the god of ancient Babylon.
Right.
He is played by a certain character in the show.
Oh,
and he is an actual alien who now lives in our world today, and they go around chasing him and try to stop him. That sort of thing. So by those purposes, he is Baal. And in my story, I don't really go that specific with it, but I actually address in my science fiction story, it's really kind of about, it opens with the revelation of Armageddon. Aliens who kind of resemble what we would think of as angels, bird kind of descended people.
Oh boy, you're killing me.
Lay siege to Earth. It opens with them on every mobile device because they're technology, right? Every mobile device, every computer, it opens up, its screen goes dark, and it just says "come," just like it says in the Bible. And then boom, here they come and start attacking. And then that's the opening of the book, and it goes forward. So if I wanted to apply myself to spending time writing my book, I actually have that one. I have 2 other books in the series, and then a 10-part series after that. So that's where I'd apply my skills.
It's funny you should say all that, because it's been my claim since way before that I met you, that when heaven arrives and angels come out, that there will be a large percentage of religious and non-religious people who say, oh, you're a biological designed to trick me. So I'm sitting with you here now and you're saying that, and I'm going, yeah, Yeah, I think people will think that. I really do.
Yeah. Yep. I appreciate those. Sokar. He was the devil in SG-1. That's true. He was. Yeah. They addressed Satan. There was an episode where they went and there was an old Christian community, and then the Gua'uld who was ruling that community wasn't trying to play Jesus; he was playing Satan. In most cultures, they found it'd be a Babylonian culture or another ancient culture, Mongolians, for example, and the Gua'uld was playing a god from their history. In this case, with Jesus, they avoided Jesus and they went with Satan. So the Gua'uld was trying to play Satan and convince people. I enjoy it. I like sci-fi. I like Stargate. Anyway,
What I've seen of the show was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. They had a good idea, But so that's kind of where my ambitions lie whenever it comes to writing of the books. Let me get this up here.
To all that, I would say something very heretical.
Okay.
If I said there was an intelligence who functionally affected reality, but never lived here, and promised to come here someday, then I'm obviously talking about Christianity,
okay,
or
or
an alien invasion, or
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you
alien
look
invasion,
at the
yeah,
overview, that's all talking about one same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
So,
you'd find my sci-fi
what are they
story
really-
very interesting.
I already do. That's why I'm talking about it in this way.
We'll talk about it later.
I mean, my very odd perspective on religious texts
Mhm.
makes things like the occurrence of evil impossible to have been generated through federal headship. A really interesting view that I don't hear Christians talking about.
Right.
And there's really a lot of points like that in the text that they're just, I don't know, they can't see it because of a disconnect or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to have that conversation with you sometime.
Yeah. As far as the whole Eve thing and what you were covering about her, I see it all as oppression of women, misogyny, ancient misogyny. It's like an instruction manual for how to oppress your wife. Chapter 2 and chapter 3 of the Bible.
That's terrible. No, in Christian doctrine, you're right.
Yeah. Well, just depends. Following the Abrahamic religions, all the women are subject to the same thing. They're all subject to Eve's transgressions. Are the women of Judaism not? They cover their hair. They're all forced into modesty of
so
one
here's the
fashion
problem
or
with
another.
that. There's a
Okay.
big difference between how I describe to you chemistry and what chemistry really is.
Okay.
There could be a huge disconnect there, especially if I'm bad at chemistry.
Right. Well, Christianity and Islam, we have it's not very hard to find the oppression of their women. Matter of fact, in my latest Evil God Monster of
I agree
Abraham
with
series,
you.
I talked about how later on in the book of in the Bible in 1 Timothy 22, where he says that a woman should not teach a man, the very next scripture says because Eve was weak, because she screwed up. Now, so that even in the Bible, the Old Testament, the Jew book, is the, you know what I'm saying, the difference between the Christians and in the Old Testament, it said, well, no, Timothy, yeah. So it says these things.
Right.
That's not right. I'm saying that wrong.
So,
but you know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying.
In the Bible itself, we didn't even have to come to modern times to find examples of people going, women are lesser because of Eve's transgressions. We find it literally spelled out in the Bible.
Okay,
and then we see Islam. You know how Islam treats, or the extremists, the more fundamentalist Islam treat their women.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentalist Christians treat their women.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't really speak to Jewish people. I can't speak to how I don't know. I just assume
when you were introducing me to the idea of your book and series that you're doing, and what you did to make me understand that is you referred to things I already knew.
Okay.
So there's nothing wrong with like referring to something that I already knew and then bringing me up to speed to what you know.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean what I knew was a fact.
Okay.
Because in teaching me, you're kind of bringing me up to speed. You're kind of correcting me, actually, which is fine.
On my perspective of this, yes.
Right. Okay. So throughout that work, when the new introduced ideas are being presented, they refer back to the old ideas simultaneously and correct them. that doesn't mean they agree with the old idea.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean that.
Well, I'm
Okay.
talking about if we're still talking about how women are treated in the Bible as set by example by Eve, and how they are treated in modern religions. I think the evidence is clear. It's obvious how they.
But I would make a big separation between practitioners and practice. I don't think that a biased person. What's that?
Isn't that just kind of? I'm not trying to be rude, but isn't that just equivocating the point?
It's unequivocating.
Just separating between the practice and the practitioner. Sure. One is bad, one is not bad. Is the practice bad, but the practitioner is not bad?
Well, it depends on your view of it and how you act because of your view of it, doesn't it?
Right. Well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the oppression of women being bought and sold throughout history. I mean, marriage of little girls right now in modern times.
Yes.
All these things can be directly related to how the Bible treats women. The example has been set.
It can be directly related to how people view that text to justify what they would do anyway.
Got you. Which all brings us back to the perfect and clear written word of God.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
You know, actually, it doesn't claim that. Actually, it says the exact opposite.
Christians claim that.
Christians claim that it's Nephilim Free told me a 7th grader can read the Bible and understand it. And I'm like, you're so full of crap, I can't even believe you said that. Right. Especially when it says it contains hidden manna and meat of the word, and you've only gotten the milk. I mean, it says exactly you don't get it. Right. And you're not going to, and you're not even supposed to till the time is right. That's part of the story, too. When the time is right, these things will start to come to light through people. Mm-hmm. So it's plainly not supposed to be a plain reading, and that's on purpose.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole twisted string, a whole knot to untie, because why make a book so obscure that people can't understand it? If that's the only way through, I'm not disagreeing with your views. I'm talking about the Christian doctrine. Okay. Why make a book that nobody can read, nobody can understand? Now,
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
So when we were children, our parents told us fairy tales.
Right. Okay.
And the fairy tales were very, very colorful stories. But when we were children, we really thought that Goldilocks talked to 3 bears who responded.
That's true. Now, let me ask you,
but it's just a fairy tale.
That's true.
Okay. But as we grew up, we come to realize that that's all about respect for others who aren't like you.
I understand that.
And things like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it took us growing up to realize it. Right. And it was something that changed in us that interpreted that story to us.
I understand that. I understand all these. Yes, that's wonderful.
So what I'm saying is these stories have been around forever so that everybody can hear it, so that when the events happen, the events themselves will translate the story and make it make sense to the people.
Right. And the kind of, and I appreciate that, actually. Well, the point I'm trying to get across is that the people who will never experience that because they've lived and died is uncountable. There was a preacher, I'm suspecting, back in the 1800s going, someday you will be enlightened and you will understand, and the events in this book will unfold. And all those people came and went and died.
Sure.
And that never happened for them.
Right.
Well, we assume it never happened. It's all a matter of interpretation,
Well, I'm not going to talk about after-death experiences. Not right. I think that's off topic. But let's not go there right now.
Thank you for that. Right. Yeah, that's a whole different.
Let's not go there right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in order that these ideas, say for instance, Grimm's fairy tales. Mm-hmm. If you wanted Grimm's fairy tales all over the United States,
right?
Well, you would, and you wanted it by the year today. If you wanted it by this date today, you couldn't have started yesterday. So when would you want to start something like that if you wanted Grimm's fairy tales everywhere?
Well, I get that, but kind of what you're saying is that these things, the word is so mysteriously hidden in this locked box that we can't understand, but someday we're going to understand it. And yet they're metaphors, there's stories in there that we have to kind of ply through, but again, we'll never really understand it. It's sort of like your three bears analogy. Okay, you have a small child at home, and you're going to leave them a tome of knowledge that will help them. What is going to be more beneficial to them that story, again, metaphor, they may never really get it if they don't, or things like don't touch a hot burner.
Well, actually,
Don't wander out into the street. This is real helpful information that child can use that will literally save its life, as opposed to...
Hopefully the parents taught the child those things as well, and in that literal way.
Well, see, that's kind of what I'm saying. The Bible takes a lot of opportunity and says nothing. We're talking about how... let's think chapter 5 of the Bible, where it's got nothing. It's nothing but begats from Adam to Noah. Nothing but begats.
Can I read you a set of begats?
Certainly, if you want.
I'd love to read you a set. Okay, so this is. I troubled myself to look up the definitions of these names.
Okay.
And I wrote them down in the order given.
I tell you, I've heard this before about how it makes this story. Okay, go ahead. Tell me.
No, maybe you have, because you said it makes a story. About
and the first, I don't remember exactly what the story is. It's like, when you write the names together, it's like God does this and is a wonderful God and believe in God or whatever. It tells us right. And then there's a second one that's different than the first one. I've heard that. I haven't actually examined those. You don't see how a person sitting here. All right, so you and I right now, we're going to write a story.
Sure.
All right, so Michael's name means this. And we can sit here and we can do that all day long. That doesn't give it any legitimacy at all. The fact that some guy in the desert, right? It was a waste of space when they could have been telling us, boil your water before you drink it. If this was an omniscient God. How many people have suffered and died? Miserable, horrible deaths. I think that's a good
argument if that was on topic. I don't think that's the topic at all. It's not about health. It's not about disease treatment. It's not about abortion. It's not about murder. It's not about any of that stuff.
Well, there's a lot of murder in there, though.
No, there's a lot of things that Christians think are describing murder.
Oh, so when the Lord tells his servants to go throughout the temple and slaughter everybody, starting with the old men, murder. Hey, so they go there and they clap at these people?
Sometimes or did they kill them? Clap.
This is kill them. This is very specifically kill them.
I'll just give you something that's I think is really easy for anybody to find. Have people taken rocks and bashed humans' heads in with them? Yes, they have. Have they sometimes justified that based on their religion? Yes, they have.
Did the Lord God in his text literally tell them to do that?
No.
In this text it does.
No, it doesn't. That's what they think it means.
Right. Because
but here's something that's really easy to find.
Okay.
Which defeats the idea that the word stone means a rock. I'll give you an example of stone cannot mean rock. Cannot. But it uses the word stone. When an altar is built, it has to be built out of 2 uncut stones with the word of God written in them.
Yeah.
How would you write in a stone not cut?
Well, I get that. You and I actually talked about that before. And I think when we talked about that before, it was like, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this round rock that we just found on the ground. We're not going to cut it and shape it into form. We're just going to write into it God's name.
Well, then you just cut it.
Well, yes, you did cut it, but I'm talking about cut to be formed. And see, that's what we're talking about. You're talking about
you can't cut it.
I know. I understand that. And then because they then say they put the name of the God in it, that somehow means it's miraculous.
No, what it's saying is no, it's not miraculous.
Then how do they do it?
They don't do it. It doesn't mean a rock.
Okay, so bash the child's head against the
stone.
So is that a rock or not?
No, it also is not talking about rocks.
What are you bashing? So interesting.
Okay, so
that's interesting.
So okay. You've heard the expression "throw the book at them."
Okay. We're talking about a parable.
The 2 uncut stones
Psalms.
In the case of the Bible would be the Old and New Testament. That is uncut, like you can't change them, like don't change them.
Or is that inference?
In context, it's inferred that it doesn't mean stones at all. It doesn't mean rocks. Okay. It means stone, like something you can't change. That's the way the word stone is being used there. So, like Jesus says, go out and testify and be stern about it. The Old Testament is saying the same thing. It says, throw the book at them, like the Bible, like beat their head in with the Bible, not smash their head in with a rock.
Okay.
It's not.
Just for other people who are watching, I'm referring to Psalm 127, where
Go
they're
ahead. I don't
singing
know
a song which
which one's
literally
which.
tells them to grab your enemy's children by the feet and smash their head on a rock. So I'm
No,
not
it
sure
doesn't
what you're
read
talking.
that.
Okay.
It doesn't read smash their head in on a rock.
Okay.
It
Carry on.
can't.
I'll look it up while you. Well,
Okay.
it depends on how you interpret it, right? Apparently.
Well, if you want to go with some of the very new interpretations where churches like published their own version of it and copyrighted it, made money on it and stuff, well, you might find it written that way. I don't know. But there's like 30 different Bibles out there now. I can't keep track of all of them.
I know, right? I actually had a talk with somebody about that. That was very fascinating. It's 137. Happy, Psalm 137 says, "Happy are those who bash the enemy's infants against the rock."
Wow, that's a hard interpretation.
Hard interpretation. How do you
That's
read
not
that?
what it originally said at all.
Oh. And he claimed that it meant to dash your sins against the rocks by reason. That's what it says. Anyway.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say it that
so
way, but I
however
take
you,
it more directly.
yeah, but one of the things is a lack of education. Throughout history, people are not, there's just, when you take the number of people who have been educated and the people who have not, the difference is significant. So what happens when you apply this type of literature to people who are uneducated?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I see obviously what happens when an educated person believes this stuff. I mean, they can equivocate and make it soft. But we got people killing their kids right now because of the words of this book.
Yeah, I think
Misinterpretation of the Christian doctrine that you're actually against, I believe.
I'm against that doctrine. I'm against being violent and hateful and prejudiced and
absolutely,
etc.
Yeah. No, I don't get that from you at all. That you're any of those things. And I don't mean to be so contrary. It's just we've got points to. Okay, it's fun.
No, I don't think you're being contrary.
I don't mean to be an ass. It just happens. Listen, I'm not trying to be a jerk. It comes naturally.
if I'm going to make a point that matters at all about my belief system that I've adopted, then we're going to have to get into the nitty gritty of it. And you're going to have to attack the nitty gritty or you're not doing your job.
Throw some challenges out there.
Right on.
Well, real quick, I want to ask you, we're kind of running out of time for the 1 hour thing. Things have changed in my circumstance, so the show will go longer in the future. But I wanted to ask you, what are your goals? Like me, I'm trying to grow a YouTube channel. I want to get following and, become a YouTube star and pose in my bikinis and stuff like that on Instagram.
Right on.
In your case,
I don't have the body for that. So that's not what I'm going for. I want people to see this.
Okay. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. And I want them to laugh at me if they want. I don't care. I don't care what people think of me.
Right.
But I want them to understand this view enough. So this is chapter 21 of the book of Revelation. Or in Zuni Indian, it's the red star Kachina. Okay. Or in Japanese art, it's the white flute woman with the red crest headdress god. Or it's a Hindu god whose name's about that long I can't pronounce.
So they get around.
Because Hindu is like that.
Right.
But anyway, I want them to see this so that when they see this arrive, they understand it's their ancestors here to rescue us basically from ourselves.
Gotcha. Okay.
And natural disasters.
I've seen that. I've seen your little logo before whenever I was creating the channel thumb, but I had no idea what it was. Interesting. Now, is that like a progression of the moon? Is that what that is?
Isn't that so interesting? It's funny you should mention that. These are the Jewish blood moons, but it's not a progression of the moons because that's not what that story is talking about. That story is talking about the arrival of this.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not moons.
But the blood moon is representative of is all I'm asking.
One of these.
What is it? All right, those little circles that go around it. Each one of those represents what? I thought that's what I was talking about being the moon.
One of them is our heaven or the lowest part of heaven or the New Jerusalem or it's referred to several ways. Gotcha.
There is a lot. I've got some new people showing up. Hi, Prince Vegeta. I hope I said that right. Prince Vegeta. Big man, I'm sorry. I tore that all up. Vegeta. It's like a Vegeta.
It looks like Vegeta.
Hi, Prince. Nice to meet you. Glad to see you here on the show. Hi, everybody that showed up.
Oh, I know Easyism works.
Easyism works. There's Easyism.
Easyism
nice
works.
To see. Yes.
Pretty cool. Been very patient with me.
Yes, and wait, doorknob head. Always don't look. Always
Don't
trouble.
read it.
Don't read it. He's always
That's
putting.
that's for other
You
folks. I'm
just.
not reading it.
Oh, here he goes. It's soft water in the tub.
Drowning
Thank
babies
you.
in soft water. Is that it? I don't. What's the soft water thing?
Well, he's drowning babies.
Instead of
It's
dinner,
what's
thank
instead
you,
of
Bible,
dinner.
and the
Thank you,
voices in
Bible, and the
mommy's
voices
head.
in mommy's head. Yeah, and then he said, "It's
You
soft
can't actually
water."
read that stuff.
Yeah, no, you got to be nice. Be nice. Okay, everybody. I thank you very. Math Pig, always with the Math Pig. You know, starting the trouble, doing the thing. Math Pig, thank you for showing up. I appreciate you, everybody. Thank you for showing up. I think we're done for now. Thank you, Richard, for stopping by. I'm sorry
Thanks
Chris
for
wasn't
letting me.
here to do the interview. Normally, I just do the stuff in the back. I'm not a very good interviewer because I got a funny talking accent, but he talks funny too, so it makes it okay. I mean, it all kind of works out in the end. Thank you, everybody who showed up in the chat. Richard, you know, man, I'd love to have you on again. I expect there's a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot to unpack here, and I tell you what, and I'll make you the same offer I make everyone. You give me 12 hours of notice,
Uh-huh.
and that's it. That's the end of the story. You just give me 12 hours of notice.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Oh, okay. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to have you back, and we'll do the thing. I appreciate everybody. Thank you for stopping by. Have a wonderful day. We're going to wrap it up, and we're off to save the world. Thank you very much. What was it you say? Peace and
Peace and respect to you.
peace and respect. Peace and respect. You guys have a wonderful day.